Right friends, welcome back to News Capsules for 45th week. This is Prime Minister in Japan. Narendra Modi visited Japan, and in this connection let us have a glance at Japan. Capital is Tokyo and national language is Japanese, and almost 98% of the people are Japanese ethnic group, and Emperor is Akihito, Prime Minister is Shinzo Abe, and please don't forget the parliament is called Diet, 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 and the population is almost stagnant at 127 million. In fact, it reduced during the past 1 year. So the population of Japan is around 12.5 crores. Life expectancy probably the highest in the world at 84 years. And Human Development Index or HDI is very high at 0.891. Nominal GDP is third in the world. Please don't forget, our GDP is around $2 trillion, whereas Japan's GDP is $4.5 trillion. And if you look at resurgence of Japan after Second World War, all of you are familiar with the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were battered during 1945, and subsequently Second World War ended. And within 30 years, Japan's economic resurgence is a lesson to many countries. And in 1960s to the 1980s, this period can be termed as post-war economic miracle as far as Japan is concerned. And Japan is at the forefront in Asia as far as industrialization is concerned. In fact, Japan developed much before China. Then the country recorded the growth rates of 7.5% average for almost 20 years from 1960 to 1980. The average growth rate during 1960s and 1970s was 7.5%, and Japan is the third largest economy by nominal GDP and fourth largest if you consider the GDP under purchasing power parity. And another important aspect is it is a member of G7, then G20 as well as OECD, and please don't forget India is not a member of OECD. And relations with the world as a whole, Japan after the Second World War followed pacifist constitution. It never interfered in anybody's affairs. It followed pacifist constitution, and the policy was known as self-defense doctrine. And last year the self-defense doctrine was modified to collective self-defense doctrine. What is the meaning of collective self-defense doctrine? When the sovereignty of Japan is threatened, then Japan can send armed forces to fight along with the allies. When Japan's sovereignty is threatened, then Japan can send armed forces to fight along with its allies. This is a change from pacifist constitution. Then it has got territorial disputes with China on Diaoyu Islands. These islands are also known as Senkaku Islands, and these islands are in East China Sea. Please look into this map. Then Japan is the key country in Asia Pacific region to pivot to Asia policy of United States of America. And United States of America, in order to contain China, wants to have strategic relationship not only with Japan but also with India as well as Australia and some other countries. And now with the election of Donald Trump, the foreign policy initiative of United States of America is not known. And Japan is looking at business opportunities because the economy is almost stagnant because of graying of population, and the life expectancy, as I have already told you, is around 84 years, and substantial population is a 60 plus age group. Young population is less in comparison to developing countries, and that is the reason why it wants business opportunities with various countries so as to give momentum to its economy. Then if you look at Japan and India during the past 20 years, all of you are familiar that India conducted a nuclear test in 1998, and subsequently Japan suspended economic assistance for 3 years and had frozen all political exchanges. And suspension of economic assistance resulted in halting of new projects, that is one part, suspension of yen-denominated loans, and at the same time imposition of strict controls over technology transfers was also imposed by Japan. And at the same time, Japan called upon the G8 countries to condemn India and Pakistan with regard to their nuclear programs. And in the year 2008, all of you are familiar, India concluded civil nuclear cooperation agreement with the United States of America, and subsequently Japan has not signed civil nuclear agreement with India for the past 8 years, and Japan is insisting on India to sign NPT as well as Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. And for the past 3-4 years there is a turnaround. The reason is Japan's economy is not doing well, and the second important point is it requires business opportunities abroad, right? So there is a turnaround during the past 2 years, and which ultimately led to signing of civil nuclear deal with India. And please don't forget, India is the first non-NPT country with which Japan concluded civil nuclear cooperation agreement. And if you look at the salient points of our Prime Minister's visit to Japan, overall 10 agreements were signed to boost bilateral cooperation. Most important agreement is cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Please look into this slide. Why Japan signed after several years? As I have already told you, India is the first non-NPT country with whom Japan signed civil nuclear cooperation agreement, and Japan, after dithering for several years, signed this because of the reason it required business opportunities, and India has got ample of business opportunities, and United States of America based firms, General Electric as well as Westinghouse have got substantial ownership of Japanese firms. Another important aspect is Japan badly need markets after the Fukushima accident. After the Fukushima accident, Japanese people are not in favor of nuclear power plants in their country, and they require business opportunities abroad. And the agreement was made possible not only because of compulsion of Japanese firms, but also because of good relations between Narendra Modi and Shinzo Abe. And here one important aspect is there is one termination clause. This became controversial, though the agreement for cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy has gone well, but there is some irritant. The irritant is with regard to termination clause by Japan. Japan included a note on views and understanding of the civil cooperation agreement, which talks about a termination clause. You may ask, what is meant by termination clause? Termination clause is nothing but emergency clause. This emergency clause allows Japan to invoke suspension of nuclear supplies if India tests a nuclear weapon. If India tests a nuclear weapon, then Japan can suspend nuclear supplies to India. India says that this is the view of Japan and not binding on India, and India also says that the termination clause was recorded in the views by the Japanese side considering the special circumstances, because Japan is the only nation to have suffered a nuclear attack. So finally India said that India has not given any additional commitments to Japan, and it is as usual when you look at signing of civil nuclear agreements. Probably Japan is the 11th country with which India signed this civil nuclear agreement. Right friends, if you look at the other aspects, MOU was signed between ISRO and JAXA, that is the space agency of Japan, for cooperation in planetary exploration, then satellite navigation and space industry promotion. Then another important agreement is with regard to memorandum of cooperation in manufacturing skill transfer promotion program, which emphasizes training 30,000 Indian youth in Japanese styled manufacturing in the next 10 years. So during the next 10 years, 30,000 Indian youth are going to be trained. This is important. Then MOU was signed between National Investment Infrastructure Fund and Japan Overseas Infrastructure Investment Corporation for promoting investment in infrastructure projects in transportation and railways. Another important aspect is MOU was signed between Hyogo, this is nothing but a state in Japan, it is called Hyogo Prefecture. MOU was signed between Hyogo and Gujarat to promote mutual cooperation in the fields of business, academics, cultural cooperation, disaster management. And finally, the Prime Minister also stated that visa on arrival facility was extended to Japanese nationals, and India extended a long-term 10-year visa facility to eligible Japanese business persons. And the Prime Minister also stated that the Malabar naval exercises underscore the convergence of our strategic interests in the broad expanse of waters of Indo-Pacific. Right? So, this is all about the Prime Minister's visit to Japan. And the highlight of the visit is agreement for cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy, because India is the first non-NPT country with which Japan signed a civil nuclear agreement. That is one part, but the irritant is termination clause, and it is still not clear what exactly meant by this termination clause as far as India is concerned, though India stated that it is not binding on India. Right friends, with this let us conclude. Please do join for other capsules. Have a nice day. Thank you.